Somewhere in the mountains of North Korea, there is a fence that stretches for miles through terrain so remote, snow falls and no one hears it. Behind that fence, people wake up every morning, work, sleep, and according to every official record on Earth, they don't exist. North Korea operates a network of political prison camps. They are called Kwanliso, a word that roughly translates to management place. Most estimates suggest between 80,000 and 120,000 people are held inside them right now. The camps don't appear on any official North Korean map. The government has never acknowledged most of them exist. Here's the part that might keep you awake tonight. Some of the people inside were never accused of a crime. They were sent there because of something a relative did, a grandfather, an uncle, a cousin they may have never met. North Korea can be inherited. It's called Yunjwaje, punishment stretched across 3 generations. You've probably never thought about what it would mean to be punished for something someone in your family did before you were born. Most of us carry our names without wondering if they could become a sentence. Camps began taking shape in the 1950s, in the years following the Korean War. What started as detention for political opponents slowly expanded into a vast, hidden system. In the 1970s and 1980s, entire families were being relocated into camps they would never leave. For decades, the outside world had almost no information. Then, in the early 2000s, something changed. Defectors began reaching South Korea and the West, and they started talking. One of the most well-known accounts came from a man named Shin Dong-hyuk. He said he was born inside Camp 14, but he had never known the outside world. He described forced labor from childhood, public executions, and a level of control so total that prisoners informed on their own families. The story reached the United Nations, became one of the most widely cited testimonies in the history of North Korean human rights documentation. What would it mean to grow up without knowing the world outside a fence? Another survivor, Kang Chul-han, was sent to Camp 15 as a 9-year-old boy along with his entire family after his grandfather was accused of political disloyalty. He spent 10 years inside. He later wrote a memoir called The Aquariums of Pyongyang. Testimonies were only part of the picture. Starting in the mid-2000s, commercial satellite technology became sharp enough to see what had been invisible. Organizations began publishing satellite imagery showing large compounds, guard towers, mining operations, and what appeared to be burial grounds. The images matched the descriptions survivors had given, down to specific buildings, down to specific fences. In 2014, the United Nations released findings of its Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in North Korea. The report ran over 400 pages, concluded the North Korean government was committing crimes against humanity, including extermination, enslavement, torture, and enforced disappearance in a systematic and widespread manner. The Commission recommended referral to the International Criminal Court. As of today, that referral has not happened. Evidence comes from 3 main categories. First, defector testimony. Over 300 former prisoners and guards have provided accounts to human rights organizations and governments. Second, satellite imagery showing the physical infrastructure of the camps, including changes over time, such as expansion, demolition, and apparent relocations. Third, the UN Commission of Inquiry itself, which conducted over 80 formal interviews and reviewed thousands of pages of documentation. It's important to note, independent access to the camps has never been granted. No international observer, no journalist, no humanitarian organization has been allowed inside. Everything we know comes from the outside, from people who escaped, from images taken from space, and from the rare document that finds its way across a border. North Korea has consistently denied the existence of political prison camps. In 2014, a government spokesperson called the UN report political provocation and rejected its findings entirely. There are also questions about individual testimonies. Shin Dong-hyuk, whose account was among the most prominent, later acknowledged that he had changed certain details of his story, including the camp where some events took place and the timeline of specific incidents. This revision sparked significant public debate about the reliability of defector testimony in general. Does one changed detail undo an entire truth? Or does the larger picture still hold? Most human rights researchers argue that while individual details may be imperfect, as they often are with trauma survivors recounting years of captivity, the overall pattern is consistent across hundreds of independent accounts and corroborated by physical evidence. What remains unknown is significant. We don't know the exact number of current prisoners. We don't know the full scope of what happens inside today, and whether any meaningful international accountability will ever follow the UN recommendations. There's a detail from Kang Chul-han's memoir that is hard to forget. He described how, as a child inside Camp 15, he once caught a rat, and he ate it. Not because he was starving in that exact moment, though he often was, but because protein of any kind had become something almost unimaginable. A small, ordinary cruelty, the kind that doesn't make headlines, the kind that happens on a Tuesday. The people inside these camps are not abstractions. They are parents who were separated from children. They are children who grew up not knowing what a city looks like or what a choice feels like. They are people whose names were removed from records, whose families on the outside were told never to ask about them again. They are, in every sense the state can enforce, people who do not exist. This is not just a story about North Korea. It's a story about what happens when a state has the power to make someone disappear, not through a single act of violence, but through bureaucracy, silence, and time. The prison doesn't just hold the body, it erases the person. No trial, no record, no appeal. It's as if you never were born. The UN Commission compared the scale and nature of these camps to the worst atrocities of the 20th century, and yet for most of the world, they remain largely invisible, not because the evidence is hidden, but because attention is finite, and the people inside have no voice that carries beyond the fence. Think of it this way: the evidence is a window. It's open, we can see through it, but seeing and acting are separated by a distance that diplomacy has not yet been willing to cross. Here is what we know for certain: the camps exist. Satellite images confirm their physical presence. Hundreds of survivors have independently described similar conditions inside them. What remains unconfirmed is the exact number of current prisoners, the full scope of what happens inside today, and whether any meaningful international accountability will ever follow the UN recommendations. But there's one more thing we haven't talked about yet. If satellite monitoring and open-source intelligence continue to improve, the camps will become harder to conceal or deny. Public awareness and pressure from civil society organizations will likely grow. This trend is already underway and accelerating year by year. If the international community increases diplomatic pressure, and China, North Korea's primary ally and trade partner, supports accountability measures, a referral to the International Criminal Court becomes more plausible. But that would require a significant geopolitical shift that has not materialized in over a decade of discussion. If the status quo holds, no access, no referral, no sustained global attention, the camps will likely continue to operate as they have for 70 years. And the people inside will remain invisible to the very systems that were designed to protect them. There's a strange weight that comes with knowing something you cannot change, at least not yet. Somewhere tonight, behind a fence in a mountain valley no one can visit, someone is alive, and officially, they are no one. Maybe the only thing worse than a prison is a prison the world agrees to forget. What does it mean when knowing isn't enough? If this story stayed with you, there's another one that might explain why. It's called The Family That Smuggled Themselves Out of North Korea. If this kept you on edge, there are more real stories hiding behind the world's most secretive borders. Subscribe for cinematic 3D documentaries that uncover the human stories governments try to bury.